We have not gone grocery shopping in 3 months. This is the final week of the Pantry Challenge, and I want to show you guys what meals we are making this last week, along with some of the takeaways that I've had from the Pantry Challenge and some of the first things that we ran out of, which actually really surprised me. We are making a sausage and potato quiche, and this is actually going to be for dinner, not for breakfast. Out of our pantry, I grabbed potatoes and freeze-dried peppers and mushrooms, and then I had some onions in cold storage that I grabbed as well. We were loosely following a recipe for this, but of course, the recipe didn't call for freeze-dried anything, so we wanted to make sure that the vegetables had plenty of time to rehydrate, so I boiled some water. I always turn it off before I put the veggies in, and then put them in there, and I just let them sit while I went ahead and did some of the other things like chopping up the onions and chopping up the potatoes. Over the last 10 years or so, we have been working on going to the grocery store less and less, and it has been a continual process, sort of an evolution, where we need less of one certain food group or certain items. And so coming into the Pantry Challenge, I was feeling pretty good about it just because we already have a couple of food groups knocked out. Like, I know I got the vegetables covered and we got all of the meat covered. Like, those are two things we are 100% self-sufficient on, meaning we do not buy those things at the grocery store anymore. And we are able to produce them on our homestead. That being said, there are several things that we do not have 100% covered and we don't grow at all. So some of those things are dairy products, for one. I am lactose intolerant, and some of my kids show signs of also being lactose intolerant. So we do not have a dairy animal on our homestead at this point. It doesn't make sense for us just because we do not consume a ton of dairy. And the dairy that we do consume, a good portion of it is cheese, which is pretty time consuming to make. So that is one thing that I have not buckled down and tried to figure out how to do myself yet, just because I feel like the need that we have for that is quite a bit smaller compared to other things that I want to tackle first, like fruits. Fruits are the next big food group that I would really love to tackle just because we eat so much of it. They are very expensive at the store. It's very difficult to find organic options for fruits and things that are grown in a way that is similar to the way I grow my vegetables in my garden. I'm striving to get them to be very nutritionally dense and just get my soil to the point where the vegetables have a lot of nutrition just because the soil is very healthy. That is the end goal. So we're working on that for the fruit. And at this point, we still buy grains and we do buy some oils as well. And then a few other things that we just can't grow here. I kind of went off on a little tangent there, but the reason I'm telling you all that is because eventually we did start to run out of things. And one of the first things that we ran out of was yogurt. My kids really like yogurt, and I had bought what I thought was a good amount of yogurt, but that was the first thing to go. We also ran out of cocoa powder. We ran out of mozzarella cheese, cheddar cheese. Another thing that kind of surprised me was we ran out of popcorn. That's a go-to snack, especially during the Pantry Challenge that we have. We were really close to running out of butter at this point. I ran out of all-purpose flour, and we also ran out of mustard. For the most part, we did not really run out of anything until about 3 weeks until the end of the challenge. And that's when we started to run out of certain food items. So that's really when it started to become a challenge. So you'll see throughout this that I am substituting quite a bit of things for what we would normally have. I will say also that outside of the Pantry Challenge on a regular basis, we do eat quite a bit differently than your average American family just because we are already growing a fair amount of our own food. And with being lactose intolerant, I do not have just regular milk to put into things, so I've come up with my own substitutions. For example, in this, we needed milk for the egg mixture, and so I use sour cream that I mix with water, and that is just easier on my stomach. So I mix that up and I use that as a milk substitute. I was very, very loosely following a recipe for this, and I ran out of the egg mixture. So I actually put one of the quiches in the oven because my kids were getting ready to go to their youth night for church. And so I needed to make sure we at least had one of these done before they left. So I stuck one of them in, and then I mixed up some more egg mixture. And I also felt like some of the other quiches needed more vegetables. So I ended up rehydrating some dried tomatoes that I had that I really needed to use because they are several years old. The recipe called for cheddar cheese, which we were out of. So I added some freeze-dried onion powder and the freeze-dried garlic scape powder. And I was actually really surprised at how much flavor that added. And we didn't even really need the cheese because it added so much flavor to it. Making our own homemade spices has become one of my favorite ways to use our freeze dryer. It just preserves so much of the flavor in those herbs in a way that no other preservation method can do. I actually ended up making a lot more quiche than I had planned on. I was just kind of winging a lot of it, and it ended up making 4 pans worth. I thought I would be able to freeze some of it, but my family surprised me and they ate every single one of those pans by the next afternoon. I am making some bread, and as I mentioned, we ran out of all-purpose flour and we are also out of bread flour. So I needed to make a whole wheat loaf, but I wanted to make it a little bit lighter. So I have these little sifting pans where you can sift a percentage of the bran out of the wheat, and then you get a lighter loaf without compromising the nutrition found in the germ. We went through this process many times, so I'm showing you a different day when we were making some hamburger buns here, but you can kind of see what's going on with the sifters a little bit better. It's kind of amazing how much bran is actually in there. So I had a jar where I was collecting that because I'm going to reuse that in my granola. I'll just mix it in with the oats so that we still eat that. I have to say that sifting the flour, it did take a little while and it was kind of tedious, but the end result was good because I was making a spelt flour loaf, and if you're just making it 100% spelt flour, it is pretty heavy stuff. So being able to take out some of that bran did make it a little bit lighter in the end. Back in the fall, we had one of our best sweet potato harvests ever. Our sweet potatoes were extra, extra, extra large. So I finally pulled out one of our very large sweet potatoes. This was the biggest of all. I think it was almost 9 pounds. And as it has set over the winter, it actually kind of shrunk a little bit. It loses a little bit of the water. When sweet potatoes are big like this, they are very hard to peel. As you can see, it took me a while to peel this potato and I didn't even get it all. And then the other difficulty is a kitchen knife cannot fit through a sweet potato that is that large around. I need an extra large knife. But I managed it. I got it done. It wasn't the safest thing, but I got through it. And sweet potatoes are just a little bit more difficult to cut anyway. So it was kind of a chore, but we got it done. The larger sweet potatoes like this have a little bit more starch in them. They are not quite as sweet as some of the smaller ones. So this was a really good place to make sweet potato fries. And at this point, it was actually quite a bit easier to cut the sweet potato fries because I had these nice big slabs of sweet potato to cut through. We had a very, very unexpected thing happen from going through the pantry challenge. And that was one of my children, Dax. He discovered that he has a real love of filming and creating meals and dishes to eat. And so he started his own YouTube channel and he made a couple of videos, and then he decided he really likes creating YouTube shorts. That is his favorite, and he films it all himself, he edits it himself, and he makes everything himself. So it has been really cool to see him find an interest and be able to pursue that. I definitely did not see that coming, but it is a very exciting result of doing the pantry challenge. So nowadays when I am making food, I am over on one side of the counter and he is usually making something else on the other side of the counter. So luckily we have enough counter space that we can both kind of do our thing at the same time. And for this night of dinner, we decided to do cornmeal crusted chicken tenders, the sweet potato fries, and I just decided to add frozen veggie with this just to use them up. That is something that I have quite a bit of still, is those frozen vegetables. The pantry challenge is hosted by my friend Jessica over at Three Rivers Homestead. With the Three Rivers challenge, you don't necessarily have to go entirely without grocery shopping. You're able to set up your own rules and just do whatever makes it a challenge for you. One of the rules that we set up for ourselves is that we would be allowed to buy fruit if we needed it. We did have some fruit in our pantry and we had some preserved. I had apples and then we had frozen cherries and frozen blueberries, and then we had a whole bunch of different freeze-dried fruits. So my goal was to go through all of those things before I gave myself permission to go to the store to get them. So as we went throughout the challenge, we were about 2.5 months in and we still hadn't gone through everything. So I decided just to do like the last final little push without going to the store to buy fruit. After all, even though I told myself we didn't need to go and get that. We had a few reasons why we wanted to do the pantry challenge and push ourselves to go 3 months without grocery shopping. To be honest, I was not going into this as a money-saving thing, and I knew that that could be a benefit of it, but that was not my main driver and motivation. Our main motivation was to learn and to just kind of see where we stood as far as if we were to have to go without shopping for 3 months, could we actually do that? We are striving to be more prepared for whatever happens. And I'm not just talking about like the end of the world. That's not really what I'm talking about. I'm more thinking of more realistic situations like, what if Cam were to lose his job? Would we be able to survive for 3 months without going shopping for food so that we could save money? Another big piece of self-sufficiency for us and wanting to be able to go without the grocery store is because I went through so many health struggles and so many of them were related to what I was eating that I just have in my head that a lot of the things coming out of the grocery store are not good for me and are not good for our family. So the more I can push away from that and be able to grow more of our own food, the better that we all feel. And already I have seen a huge difference in my health because we are able to grow more food and because I am striving to grow it in such a way that it is more nutritionally dense than what you can get out of the grocery store. Realistically, I know that we are not going to be able to grow 100% of what we eat. So for everything else, we are trying to purchase food from local farmers where possible and also other growers who use practices that build soil health, which in turn results in healthy crops. Another big takeaway from the pantry challenge was seeing how much we have been able to shift away from eating solely preserved vegetables to eating a substantial amount from cold storage and fresh from the garden all winter. So we are in zone 6B, which means on average we are reaching -5 degrees Fahrenheit as the lowest temperature of the winter. But we have been able to keep some cold hardy vegetables alive under the protection of tunnels and row cover.
What time is it, Dad?
One of the things I noticed throughout the pantry challenge was that we didn't consume nearly as much preserved food as we did last year. So coming into this next garden season, I will probably make some adjustments. I may not need to grow as much, and we definitely don't need to preserve as much to make it through the winter. So taking some of that off our plate will definitely lighten our load, which is a huge blessing because we can focus our time on other projects that need to be finished. For dinner tonight, we're making a fresh salad, and then we're going to make some spaghetti noodles, add on the veggie loaded marinara sauce that I pulled out from the freezer in the morning. We're going to add some pork and some beef to that, and we're going to make some garlic bread to go with it. So overall, the pantry challenge was definitely one of the best things that we have done in a long time. We learned so much, and we are definitely going to do it again next year.
Good meal. He liked it.
It's like round two.
Riggs!